Well, good morning. It is Friday, May the 30th. Good to have you with us on HCCTV's Up to the Minute. I'm Todd Duplantis, and it is finally Friday. A bit stormy outside, so you may want to stay indoors and watch our show this morning. We're going to have the latest in HCC news and information. It's Film Friday as well. We got a special guest, so we want to make sure you get the whole show. But first, we want to thank you for watching us on Facebook and YouTube. We're here just about every morning when HCC is in session. You can always catch us on social media anytime. We're live at 10 a.m., but you can rewatch the show. We're on X, LinkedIn, and we're also on HCC TV, a rebroadcast of the show at noon, 5, and 10 p.m., Mondays through Fridays. Now, we're going to get started with the show by introducing our guest, which is coming up in a few moments for Film Friday, an author discussing the discovery of the long lost identities of the Candyman's victims. We're talking about Lise Olsen. She's an investigative reporter, editor, and author of The Scientist and the Serial Killer and Code of Science, and she's Silence, rather. And she's also our Film Friday guest. Good to have you, Lisa. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I know this case means a lot to a lot of folks, especially if you've lived in the Houston area for quite some time. It goes back a few years, but it's a very intriguing, a very tragic case, and I understand you have some new discoveries in it as well.
That's right. The story follows forensic anthropologist Sharon Derrick, who discovered that there were additional victims than the shocking 27 that were originally found in August 1973. She has confirmed there are 30. There are new identifications revealed in the book. And I also talk about what those identifications reveal to us about what was hidden about these crimes in the 70s.
It's an incredible story. We're looking forward to hearing more about it in just a few minutes. So, Lisa, if you'd stand by, I'm going to be with you in about 10 minutes.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to kick things off. One of our own HCCTV producers sharing her scratch and sniff research for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Stacee Hawkins is joining us right now. She's not only a producer, but she's a communications instructor here at HCC. Welcome back to the show, Stacee.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate having the opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, this isn't the first time you've shared your Parkinson's diagnosis on the show, but now we understand you're involved with some groundbreaking research with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Give us a little bit about this study and how did you get involved?
Well, this is let's see if I can get it right, Parkinson's Progression Markers Initiative, the PPMI. It is a multi-year, large-scale study of both people who have Parkinson's and people who have not been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And they're looking for how the disease emerges and then how it progresses. And so they're just collecting a lot of information and finding patterns in that. I first got involved when I was first diagnosed. I went on the Michael J. Fox Foundation website just to learn the basics of the condition. And I saw the information about this study and thought, this is an easy way to kind of get some ownership back, get some power back.
You know, Michael J. Fox's story has been extremely tragic, but it's been inspiring to a lot of people. What is your take on seeing him, but just the I guess he's brought this up to a point that we're all talking about. Maybe you could discuss that a bit.
It's just wonderful. It's wonderful that he's been so open and so public. Um, Parkinson's is much more common than people might think. 90,000 people every year in the US are diagnosed with this condition. That's basically the population of San Marcos every year.
Wow.
And people don't know a lot about it. It's very mysterious. And he has kind of brought out that this is a difficult condition, but it's not a death sentence, and you can still have a good life with Parkinson's.
Now, you were doing research on the internet, obviously interested in this foundation. How did you find out about this particular study, and what inspired you to take it?
Well, I was looking around the website, and there are many places where they mention the PPMI because it has been really instrumental in new detection techniques and new treatment techniques. And then I started getting involved in activities with the Houston Area Parkinson Society, HAPS. They've been on the show a couple of times, and I met a lot of people like me with the condition who were participating, and it's very, very easy. About 4 times a year, I spend about 10 or 15 minutes doing online surveys about my symptoms, about my treatments, what's been going on, what I've noticed. And it's just an easy way to contribute to the research.
Tell us about what they call the smell test.
The smell test. There's a huge list of possible symptoms of Parkinson's, and one of them is loss of sense of smell. And that can emerge many, many years before some of the other more obvious things like tremor. So, what they're trying to do is kind of get a better handle on that. They're asking for people who are, let's see, 40 years and older without Parkinson's, and people 30 years and older who have been diagnosed for less than 7 years. And what they do is they send you these little booklets, and they're filled with little scratch and sniffs, kind of like the stickers we all had in elementary school or junior high. And then there's a list of possible scents, and you scratch it and you sniff it, and you pick the one that comes closest to that scent, and then you send your information in. I just thought it sounded like a fun, interesting, funky, strange way to contribute to research.
Have you noticed that you've been able to determine particular scents than more than others?
Absolutely. And that really surprised me. The kind of bitter, earthy umami scents, kind of like tobacco, smoke, coffee, wood, those were really easy for me to distinguish. But some of the sweeter scents, like fruits or flowers, sometimes I had trouble. I would be like, okay, this is a fruit of some kind, but I don't know what kind.
Right.
I'd look down and there'd be like orange and strawberry on the list. And I'd smell it again. Well, okay, I guess it's strawberry. But that kind of surprised me.
With his foundation, are they still in the early stages of this? Has it sparked any massive change or anything you've seen in maybe treatment therapy?
It really hasn't changed treatment much, but it's changed detection massively. It's kind of gotten a list together for clinicians of potential symptoms that people might not notice. Depression and anxiety. Sometimes that can be a symptom of Parkinson's, the loss of sense of smell. Certain types of sleep disturbances are very common early in the progression, or people who maybe started the PPMI because they had a grandfather who had Parkinson's, and then 5 years down the road, they were diagnosed themselves. And so it's made it easier for clinicians to start saying, maybe we ought to look further into screening this person.
You mentioned something about maybe having a grandfather that had Parkinson's. Is this a disease that's passed on hereditary?
A certain portion of Parkinson's is hereditary. Another group of it is from brain injuries. A lot of veterans with traumatic brain injury develop Parkinson's. A lot of boxers, like Muhammad Ali, very
Mhm.
famously developed Parkinson's. But then there's a whole group that is called idiopathic, which is a fancy medical term for me, which
We
is
don't know. Yeah.
mine. That's mine. No family history, no chemical exposure, no brain injuries, just I developed it.
You mentioned something about football players
Mhm.
or about athletes that maybe
Yes.
had head injuries. And the big call now to the NFL is to protect athletes from brain injuries because so many of them are getting concussions. Have their issues been studied from what you can tell? And has that affected the treatment of Parkinson's?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's being studied. I don't know as much about the details of that though. So, I really couldn't speak to that portion of it.
Are you seeing more treatment therapy that's working in your benefit at this point?
Absolutely. I would say that two areas that are really strong right now is one is complementary medicine, and that's kind of things like exercise, meditation, Tai Chi. That can
Wow.
tremendously help your quality of life. One thing I do every Thursday evening is a 1 hour occupational therapy class that works on my hand-eye coordination, my hand strength, and that helps me because I spend most of my time on the computer. The other area has been things like deep brain stimulation. That is a therapy that's basically kind of like a pacemaker, but for your brain. And with the advances in mobile technology, that's getting really, really good.
What are some of the things that you would suggest to people who are like yourself, who don't really have a history of Parkinson's, but is it something you should be screened for, or or their blood test? What exactly do you need to look out for, and what should you tell your doctor about?
I would say that some of the biggest things to keep an eye on are any kind of a tremor, even just a slight tremor. There are many, many things that can cause tremor. Some of them are temporary. Stress can cause a tremor, kind of like you get an eye tick.
Yeah.
But if it's persistent, if it gets stronger, moving slowly. One of the first things my husband noticed was that I was kind of shuffling my feet, particularly in the mornings. Sleep disturbances. If people say you talk a lot in your sleep, sometimes you'll thrash out in your sleep. That can be an early symptom. That loss of sense of smell. Those are some big things that can be due to any number of conditions. But if you see those, particularly if you have a history of neurological conditions in your family, just mention that to your doctor and they may send you for screening with a neurologist.
Stacee, we appreciate you being so open about this and helping bring awareness to the subject because I think it's something we all need to know more about. And we wish you continued success, and we know you do a great job around here at HCCTV.
Well, thanks. I want to thank you and HCC for all the support you've given me. You guys have been great and have made my life a lot easier. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Stacee. We'll talk to you soon. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're moving on to another serious subject this morning. This one is the delving into a serial killer from the Houston area. New discoveries. That's coming up in 10 minutes.
At Houston Community College, we make your lessons matter. Open the door to real-world education, where passions become careers. Find out more at hccs.edu and let your success take flight.
That one day at PE when they were like yelling at me and then you just linked arms with me, I don't think you know how much like that helped me. I finally like knew that I had somebody.
Welcome back to Up to the Minute on this Friday. I'm Todd Duplantis, and we've got an author right now join us. Lise Olsen is an investigative reporter, editor, and author of The Scientist and Serial Killer, as well as Code of Silence. Lise, welcome to the show, and we appreciate you joining us on here today.
Thanks, Todd. I'm glad to be here with you.
Now, I know you've been in a number of documentaries on A&E, the Pillowcase Murders on Paramount Plus, but I know I'm very familiar with Netflix, The Texas Killing Fields. I know years ago, I was a reporter myself and had a chance to work with a gentleman named Tim Miller, which I'm sure you are very familiar with, started Texas EquiSearch, and the story of his daughter. And I even covered a couple of the stories that were tied into the Texas Killing Fields. Real briefly, maybe you can update us on that because I know you were in the Netflix web. What have you known about the Killing Fields here since it's so close to us?
Well, I think the big news is that Tim Miller thinks that it has been solved, and the issue that he has is the police won't act on it.
Yeah.
The information he's dug up, and the defendant, the person who he suspects as the killer, was recently released from prison and is just living out his life. Now he may not last long. He's older and he's a cancer patient, but That was the big news in the Killing Fields saga, I think, was a lot of the evidence pointing to this man who was in prison for another murder, homicide of a young girl at the same time period, which we're talking about, as you know, the 80s
Yeah.
mainly, and when Tim Miller's daughter was killed.
Right. And it's a horrible story, but it's one that's obviously very close to us here in Texas. Another one, which your latest work about this story of helping to restore the long lost identities of teenage victims of the Candyman, Dean Corll. Now, you recently held a book signing about this man who lived in the Heights, but it also had connections to Pasadena and Bolivar. Maybe you can tell us about that.
Well, yes, this is a man named uh, Dean Corll who lived in Houston in the 70s and before that in Vidor. But he basically grew up in Houston. He had a house. He lived in a house in Pasadena. Then he rented all over Houston, the Heights, Galleria, and pretty much everywhere he lived, a boy disappeared. But no one connected it to him until in August 1973, one of the two teenagers who he had recruited to help him lure other teens to his home for, quote, parties that they never returned from, uh, kind of just cracked and killed him. So Dean Corll dies in August 1973. Shortly after that, his two teenaged accomplices lead police to mass graves at three locations. And one of them was in Houston in a boat shed in Southwest Houston, one of those storage areas you see all over the place. Another was a beach area on the High Island area on the Bolivar Peninsula, as you said. And the third was in East Texas in a piece of woods, patch of woods, where the Corll family had a cabin on a lake.
Now, of course, this story came out in 73 when there wasn't social media. We had network news, no 24-hour cable channels, but it still gripped the nation. I was living in New Orleans at the time, very young, but I remember hearing about this story before I moved to Houston. Initially, they thought 27 young men and boys had died, but it turned out now that there are at least 30, correct?
That's right. The forensic anthropologist whose story I tell in this book, Sharon Derrick, discovered in the 2000s and 2010s that there were unidentified boys still remaining from this case. She eventually found 8 sets of remains where the identifications were either had never been made or had been made not in the correct way. And as she fixed those mistakes and found more bones, she discovered that confirmed that there were 30 victims, 29 of whom we know their names. One remains unidentified. And then there are partial remains of another 5 people that were found in the same areas. So it's very likely Dean Corll had 35 or even 40 victims. The trail of murders began in 1970, but the pace of the murders and what we know today about serial killers is that they usually don't start right away by being killing machines, able to kill people in a rapid, organized way, the way he did. And he was able to conceal his crime. So her findings are sort of consistent with what we know today about serial killings. And what makes this book, I think, gripping is in each of the identifications, of course, we get new clues about the case because we can
Right.
talk to the families, we can talk to the friends of those boys, and there's new information that comes to light about how Dean Corll operated, his other accomplices, the ways he did this that I think are really still relevant today, and things we deal with like sex trafficking,
Yeah.
child
Because he was part of a
pornography.
bigger ring from what your book is saying that in a ring of child pornographers. Is that correct?
That's right. There was evidence in 1973 that was really downplayed by police that linked Corll definitively to a very large group of pornographers who were sending pictures and videos of and magazines of young boys in suggestive or pornographic poses all over the world by mail. And back in those days, there really weren't computers. They were using mail cards. They were
Yeah.
using the U.S. mail. So they were originally investigated by the U.S. Postal Service. And those busts came after Corll had died. They found in caches of photos of tons of pornography in Houston, the images of 11 of the known murder victims.
Is there
That's
a survivor from what I heard on this as well?
Yes, the book also has stories of survivors, more than one, people who were approached or chased or even grabbed and held briefly by Dean Corll who managed to get away. And how at the time, the police in Houston weren't the police we have today. They were very regressive police
Yeah.
chief, segregationist who kids who were young really didn't trust and feel like anyone was going to listen to them. So there's a lot of really compelling stories. And I know I sent you a photo of Bernie Milligan, one of the boys who tells a really terrifying story of being chased at age
And he's very
16.
public about it now, isn't he?
He is. He's been really public about it. He's come to a couple of my appearances. The book appearance you're talking about was the first appearance of the book when the book was unveiled. We had a special gathering for the friends and family of the murder victims. As I said, Sharon Derrick, who was also there, identified 8 victims and corrected the identification of one of the 8. Actually, he remains, his body, we don't know where it is.
Yeah.
But out of those 8 cases where she had major breakthroughs, we had lots of the families there and it was a very emotional. Friend of mine from the Heights also drew portraits of all those boys as part of the work to kind of honor their memories. Because, at this point, even photos of these kids were hard to find. So this is
Yeah.
kind of an homage to these lost kids, as well as a story of, forensic anthropology and breakthroughs in a cult in an old murder case that was, as you say, was very, very well known, and not just nationally, but internationally, and kind of
Yeah.
affected a whole generation of young people were made really afraid by this story and how Dean Corll had managed to get away with this undetected for so long.
The book is called The Scientist and the Serial Killer. We're talking with Lise Olsen. She's an investigative reporter and editor and author. Lisa, I understand you're getting great reviews, Texas Monthly, New York Times. We've only got about a minute left, but let me ask you this. Any thoughts of turning this into a documentary, or is that in the work?
There's nothing in the works right now. But we'll see. I mean, time will tell. The stories about these victims and their families, to me, are incredibly compelling
Yeah.
stories. And it's part of a greater narrative in our society about 40,000 or so unidentified people nationwide who still remain, cold cases in morgues and cemeteries with unmarked graves. And each of those stories unlocks, a mystery, a clue to something. And it also presents a family who's waiting for answers. And to me, that's the biggest part of this book is that families did get answers through this work, and this kind of work is really important. And I hope, hope other people in Houston will read it. I welcome your comments if you do.
Absolutely. Comment below if you're watching the show or if you get a chance to rewatch it. Lise Olsen, we appreciate you joining us this morning. Once again, the book is called The Scientist and the Serial Killer. We'll have all of the information in our social media post after the show. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, we're going to take another short commercial break. When we return on the flip side, we'll have some news and announcements on this hashtag Finally Friday as well. Stay tuned.
At Houston Community College, we make your lessons matter. Open the door to real-world education, where passions become careers. Find out more at hccs.edu and let your success take flight.
If you love them enough to crawl into a play place to get them to come down, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Today I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket to get humans to Mars.
Really tall.
I'm a rocket structural engineer, designing and building parts of the rocket. You are the generation that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
Welcome back to Up to the Minute. I'm Todd Duplantis, and we're wrapping up this Friday's edition of the show. A few things happening across the district, one of them involving our engineering academies. Our deadline to apply for HCC's engineering partnership with the University of Houston is coming up soon. High school or first-time college students, as well as college students who meet certain requirements, but the academy is not open to students with a bachelor's degree or to former U of H students. It's at the HCC Fraga campus. The deadline to apply is June the 1st. Check our post after the show for more information. And it's a time of year Instructional Services Awards. HCC is now accepting them, which recognizes outstanding faculty leader, faculty member, instructional services administrator, and or staff members. Nominate full-time colleagues or nominate yourself. The deadline to submit that is this Sunday, June the 1st as well. And a virtual book club involving climate change. HCC's Northeast College and Southeast College libraries have come together to offer a summer 2025 virtual book club for students, staff, and faculty. Registration and discussions are online for the book Afterglow: Climate Fiction for Future Ancestors. It's an anthology of sci-fi stories. Registration's open through Monday, June the 9th. And check our post after the show for more information. It's emergency time of the year because we're entering hurricane season on Sunday. That's right. Make sure with hurricane season upon us, check your My HCC website through the portal, and you can check out videos for safety, and make sure you update all of your pertinent information so you get our texts, you make sure you get our emergency emails, make sure all that's updated before we get into the summer season. And finally, fall registration has opened up on the website as well as summer registration. You can go to hccs.edu/apply for more information there. Monday is the planner of HCC's Missouri City Juneteenth celebration, workforce symposium, and job fair will be here to discuss what that will offer. And for Mental Health Monday, welcome back Dr. Sean Fitzpatrick of the Jung Center of Houston for his monthly visit. Have a great weekend. Supposed to rain today. We might have smooth sailing after this afternoon, though. Be careful, and we'll see you Monday morning live at 10 a.m. on Up to the Minute.